This is the first installment in the Noahides and the Messiah series. In our previous video, we delved into the profound concept of the restoration of the anointed Davidic kingdom. Building on that exploration, our focus in this video will shift to the next topic, the restoration of the Third Temple and the observance of all laws and mitzvot. If you missed the previous video, I encourage you to catch up on it to get a comprehensive understanding of the series so far. So let's see what we can find about the Third Temple. And it is the prophet Ezekiel that speaks most clearly about the restoration of the Third Temple, as it's written. And they shall no longer defile themselves with their idols, with their detestable things. And I, God, will form a covenant of peace for them, an everlasting covenant shall be with them. And I will establish them, and I will multiply them, and I will place my sanctuary in the midst forever. The practice of one specific mitzvah also contains a prophetic promise and thus the proof of the coming of the kingdom and of the Messiah. This is the mitzvah with regards to the cities of refuge. We find it named by the Ramban in Kings and Wars, and it states the following. Similarly, with regards to the cities of refuge, Deuteronomy chapter 19 states, when God will expand your borders, you must add 3 more cities. This command was never fulfilled. Surely God did not give this command in vain. So we can see this adding of the 3 more cities actually never took place because there were never 9, but at the most 6 cities of refuge, and the extra 3 must therefore be prophetic. And the Holy One, blessed be he, never commands something for nothing. The Eternal One is outside of time and place, and he is unchanging. And since the Torah is his will, it is also out of time, and it is therefore also immutable, as the Ramban describes in his 9th principle of faith. These cities have not been added before because the national borders have not yet been shifted, making this excitement to build these 3 cities the proof of the future U.S. kingdom and of the Messiah that will bring this about. In the Messianic Era, all mitzvot will be performed because they belong to the Torah and thus to the eternal and unchanging will of the eternal. It is therefore that the temple must be rebuilt and will be fully restored. We can read in Ezekiel the following. I will seal a covenant of peace with them. It will be an eternal covenant with them, and I will place them and increase them, and I will place my sanctuary among them forever. This shows that the temple will be rebuilt. This will take place in the time of Messiah. About this temple, we can also read in Isaiah chapter 2. It will happen in the end of days. The mountain of the temple of the Lord will be firmly established as the head of the mountains. And it will be exalted above the hills, and all the nations will stream to it. Many peoples will go and say, come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, the temple of God of Jacob. And he will teach us his ways, and we will walk in his path. For from Zion will the Torah come forth, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. In Ezekiel, from chapter 40, we read a detailed description of what this temple will look like, what its sizes and specific descriptions. The Ramban indicates that if a righteous Jewish king from King David's dynasty assumes charge of the Jewish people and bring them back to the proper observance of their commandments from the Torah and rebuilds the temple and gathers all the Jews into the land of Israel, this proves that he is the Messiah. Now, if a king should arise from the house of David, who is first in Torah and engaged in commandments, as did David his forefather, in accordance with both the written and the oral Torahs, and he enjoins all of Israel to follow in its ways and encouraging them to repair its breaches, and he fades the wrath of God, then he may be presumed to be the Messiah. If he succeed in his efforts and defeats the enemies around and builds the sanctuary in its proper place and gathered to the spirit of Israel, he is definitely the Messiah. There are also sages like Rashi that teach that God himself will build the temple and bring it down to the earth. So is the temple built by the Messiah or by God himself? One possible explanation is that if the Jewish people are worried in the time of the Messiah, the temple will descend, and if they're not worried, they will have to build it themselves. When the people are ready for it, God will perfect this temple. Another explanation is that the Messiah will build everything together with the people. That can be understood by the human mind. However, the prophecy in Ezekiel, which speaks of the construction of the third holy temple, also contains elements that are incomprehensible to the human mind, and God will reveal from heaven how these things are to be built. Yet another explanation is that the gates of the second temple were never destroyed, but descended into the earth. The Messiah will restore these gates, and God will bring down a temple from heaven. Connecting the gates with the rest of the temple is then seen as a building the temple from heaven. Is all of this important for Noahides? I think it is important because the temple is important to Noahides in at least three ways. It is a house of prayer, a place to make sacrifices, and it is a place to learn Torah. We see this in the following text. The prophet Ezekiel states, "And when my sanctuary abides among them forever, the nations shall know that I, God, do sanctify Israel." The temple will thus be a visible sign between God and his people, and the nations will learn that the Eternal is faithful, to whom he gives his faithfulness. In addition, the people will learn and experience that the people of Israel have been right in the teaching on the Torah through the ages, and the people will learn that it was they themselves followed wrong ideas and thoughts all these centuries. In Isaiah it is written, "Just he shall startle many nations, kings shall be silent because of him, for they shall see what has not been told them, shall behold what they never have heard. Who can believe what we have heard? Upon whom has the arm of God been revealed?" Seeing the faithfulness of the Eternal One will motivate the nations to also want to pray to the Holy One. The temple will therefore be a place for prayer for all the people of the world. As we can see in Isaiah, "For my house shall be called a house of prayer for all people." Also, at the time of the first and second temple, did non-Jews bring their offerings to the temple, where they were brought in by the priests. This happened especially during the feast of Sukkot. and this will happen again in the time of the Messiah, as foretold in Zechariah. All who survive of all those nations that came up against Jerusalem shall make a pilgrimage year by year to bow low to the King God of hosts and to observe the feast of Sukkot, the feast of booths. Any of the earth's communities that does not make the pilgrimage to Jerusalem to bow low to the King God of hosts shall receive no rain. In addition to offering prayers and sacrifices, the temple will be a place where the nations want to go to hear about and learn about the Torah, as we already saw in Josiah. It will happen in the end of days. The mountain of the temple of the Lord will be firmly established as the head of the mountains, and it will be extolled above the hills, and all the nations will stream to it. Many peoples will go and say, "Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the temple of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us his ways, and we will walk in his path. For from Zion will the Torah come forth, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem." Coming up in our next video, we were diving into a topic of immense significance: universal worship of God. Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss the exploration.